Our guest today makes the case for an important first step in finding clarity in our lives. Clarity can go a long way in setting the stage to help us pursue our goals, and certain times in life give us particularly fruitful opportunities to engage in decluttering, beautifying, and simplifying our environments. For more of the why and the how, stick around. Welcome to the Wellness While Walking podcast. I'm your walking guide and health coach, Carolyn Cohen. Whether you've been walking or otherwise moving regularly, or it's fallen off your schedule, I'll be here to help you make your own wellness a priority. We'll plan for about a 30-minute walk each week, and while you're ambling, I'll be rambling in your ear. We will talk about walking a bit, but also about wellness in the largest sense of the word, so that we can continue on a journey of a beautiful life of no regrets. Let's chat, learn, laugh, and move in the most natural way possible, and then get back to designing and living the best, most rewarding lives we each ever imagined. Hello, welcome to episode 88. Thanks for being here with me today. Before we continue, a reminder that I'm not a doctor or a mental health professional, and the content presented here is for educational and informational purposes only. Please make sure you check with your doctor before making any health or lifestyle changes. Are there any food combinations you just don't get? Maybe it's ham and pineapple on a pizza, or like my husband eats pickles with anything and everything. Nope, that's definitely not my thing. Maybe it's colors you think clash, or some celebrity or maybe real life couple that you just don't get. Well, I think some folks might feel that way about this show and its focus on health and wellness, of course, and also how often we talk about organizing and time management and energy and attention management as well. I mean, what gives, Carolyn? I come here for news about walking. Oh, and there is some of that coming up soon, so hold on. Yeah, so I come here for the walking inspiration and for those other well-founded aspects of health, like other movement, maybe food, nutrition kind of things, sleep, perhaps, stress management. That's all good, but what's all this about organizing and planning? Well, because I know how busy life is, how little extra time most of us have, and how many things are competing for that time. We really only have so much time, of course, only so much energy, only so much attention. If we're trying to make changes that align with our desires to live our lives well and not have regrets, then we most likely have to be intentional. We need to set ourselves up to be able to give ourselves and our goals and our focus on our most closely held values. We have to give ourselves space for that. Space in our calendars and in our brains and on our to-do lists. And we need to do that to allow new focus or renewed focus to come to be. Look, as I said last week, I have lived this reality, the reality of being crazy busy, of having huge projects, of having pressing obligations and commitments. And many of us have ups and downs on this front in terms of how much is on our plate. But I really have to tell you, I don't know many whose downtimes, quiet times are quiet, really, empty of commitments and to-dos. And so in my mind, we all need to be intentional about simplifying our lives. As a coach, I work with people to enact that approach into their days, their weeks, their months, into their planning and calendars and their home environments. And that's where we're going to focus today. I have a guest whose work I think you'll really enjoy. As somebody in midlife, it definitely strikes a chord for me, but even if you're not in midlife, I think you'll be inspired to make space in your life and in your home for more clarity. There's so much simplicity and clarity can afford us, and we'll come back to this, rest assured, because I believe those are secret ingredients for putting our health and our well-being and our goals and aspirations higher on our lists. So listen in, and I hope by the end of the episode today, you no longer think wellness and our environments are weird cousins, kind of like, well, my grandfather used to eat watermelon salt together, so hopefully nothing like that pairing. everybody. I'm here today with Mary Vra. I met Mary through Clubhouse and specifically via my good friend Terry from the fabulous Mixing Up Midlife podcast. Terry has a way of connecting with the most genuine folks. And through the phone on the Clubhouse app, Mary, I knew you were the real deal. Of late, you've been off of Instagram or on and off of Instagram, but I've really enjoyed delving more into your work, and I'm really excited to share it here with the Wellness While Walking listener. So, hi, Mary Ra, welcome.
Hey, Carolyn. I am deeply honored to be here, and I'm very excited to be able to chat about what's near and dear to my heart, and hopefully be able to provide some tips for other people that are seeking some clarity in their life.
Clarity in life. Who can argue with that? And I also am really excited about this conversation. So to start off with, you've produced much in the world, but generally you work with people on their home environments. I know you have a website, a book, you do coaching and more. Of course, your approach appealed to me particularly from the get-go because we talk a lot here about taking the next step and how what seems like a small step might have a very outsized impact. And I know you also see the value in doing things in small chunks, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. Do you mind backtracking from your current work, which we'll get to, and let us know a little bit about your journey to this point in time?
Sure. Yeah, I love the way you put this because it has been quite a journey. I was in the home mortgage industry for over 25 years. And unexpectedly, my division was downsized and I found myself without a career. And I've always been a career woman. And so to figure out what I'm going to do when I'm 54, it wasn't going to be just hanging out at the house and eating bonbons. And I ended up taking a road trip with a really good friend of mine who is an interior designer. She called me up one day and said, "Hey, I've got a client in California. Would you like to come along?" And that was as far as I let her get because I'm like, yes, yes, yes. What am I supposed to do with myself? And it was the most enjoyable trip ever because it really not only solidified our friendship. She had originally been the woman that helped me with renovating my current house. But we both knew that we really wanted to do something together. And what came out of that was that we formed a small business helping seniors with downsizing and moving into an older adult community. And I happen to live in Arizona where in Scottsdale, Phoenix, you can throw a stone and probably hit 100 of these, 1,000 of these. At some point, we all need to shift into something smaller and get a little bit of help. And that was a real pivotal moment for me because it made me open up my eyes and see how difficult it was for people to make endless downsizing decisions, figuring out what they could take with them and what they needed to let go of. It was emotionally challenging. And that's when it occurred to me, wow, maybe we should be doing this sooner. And that's when I decided to start speaking more to women in their 50s, like myself. It's usually a point in time where, hey, things have changed. The kids are grown, they're on their own. Maybe someone else has had a career upheaval like I did. Maybe they had a health challenge, but you're at a crossroads and what's next? And for me, it was like, maybe we should start to sort through all the stuff we have in our house and let go of what we don't need so that we can make room for what's coming next.
Thank you for sharing that perspective on how you got here. So midlife is, as you see it, potentially a better place to start because closer to the end of life or when you're downsizing to move into some sort of retirement facility or something similar, it's more difficult to make those decisions. And oftentimes you're under the gun a little bit. Is that one of the reasons why?
Well, it's obviously we're facing the fact that we have mortality. And I don't think any of us want to think about when I die. Okay. Just put that right out there. And so to me, when you start to take stock in where you're at in your 40s or your 50s, there's a natural break in there somewhere where you're between chapters, so to speak, that something has ended, something else can start. And if you're feeling uncertain about what that next thing is or what it could be, if you're not the type of person that has your whole life planned out, and I don't know who those people are, Carolyn, and I am not one of them, and I don't think most of us are, it's uncomfortable, it's unsettling, it's unfamiliar, and what next? So for me, I have always loved anything to do with the house. I love living in a beautiful place. I love having it feel good, look good. I've actually owned more houses than cars, and that's very un-American. But it seems like every time I've made a shift in my life, it involved a new house. And it was an opportunity to express where I'm at now and where I want to be. And so to me, that's the metaphor of making a change. And it requires that you let go of stuff that mattered to you at one point, but maybe it's not as relevant now. And I think we all want to be relevant. We want to be useful. Being an empty nester feels very uncomfortable for us because how we are relevant has now kind of ended. The kids are gone. They are creating their own life. Okay, well, where do I fit in with that? Maybe that role is shifting. And so now I need to figure out what do I want to put my attention on. So that's why I think when you're at those crossroads, decluttering, letting go of what's not front and center now is very critical.
Thank you so much. So it affords you clarity to continue on or pivot or make a slight change, somewhere in between. It just doing the decluttering a little bit earlier allows you to see the sort of the playing field and maybe think about with more intention where you're going.
I think so. And what's interesting for me is that when I was helping seniors, people that we would classify in the silent generation, these are people that were very devoted to doing the right thing, following the protocol, doing what was expected of them, always looking out for others. But I think that there was less focus on what matters to the individual, to myself. And I applaud people that focused on that. But I think that, we actually have more of a luxury when we're in our 40s or 50s to be able to say, okay, what matters to me now? And rather than wait until you're 80, why not focus now on what's the next thing I'm going to do? Because you can, and why not? It's not selfish. It's about being in control of making a difference at this age, at this generation, and not getting caught off guard, not waiting and saying, oh, who wants to have regrets? Well, that's the thing. Or saying, well, I did this for everybody else, but what did you do for yourself? I think we owe it to ourselves to be able to say, what would I like to do? Because when you do what lights you up, it's going to make a difference for somebody else. You owe it to yourself to do that.
Yeah, owe it to yourself and to others. That's awesome. And I guess just from a strictly mechanical point of view, it's always better to do these kinds of things earlier rather than later because the final product is enjoyable. And so I remember when we sold our first home where our kids were born because we had to move for a job change. And we reduced the amount of stuff that we had so that it was easier to clean on a dime and so on. And I was like, this is so nice, So to do it a little sooner and enjoy it for the decades to come, that also to me is a good impetus.
It is. And I will be the first to admit that it's not easy to do it. When you get started, and if you get started, I'm always an advocate of taking care of what's obvious. When you have a bunch of clutter on the counter, in the closet, the chair. I like to talk about the chair. There is a chair or there is a hook or there's something in your closet that everything gets dumped there. Because it takes effort to, what am I going to do with these clothes? What should I do with it? Do all of that stuff. But then when you get into the stuff that is highly personal, sentimental stuff, guilty stuff, we all stop, it's difficult without a doubt. But that's where the real work can actually begin. And it actually is the most liberating because there are things involved with that stuff. And I'm talking about emotions that we haven't addressed or that we have allowed to dominate how we're going to move forward. And it doesn't have to be that way. We haven't taken time to address it, but when we do, and we let it go, and I still deal with this. Here's an example. To me, when I'm going to let stuff go, I stick it all in a pile. I put it in a bag, or I have a place, in this room where I'm putting the stuff. I had this one top, and it's this one blouse, and it's like this turquoise color, which I love that color. But for various reasons, I think I shouldn't keep it because it's not quite the right style. But the problem is it's the right color. So it's still sitting there. And it's still sitting there like, why did I let it go? Well, if you start to get your criteria of, okay, it has to fit right, it has to feel right, it has to look good. If it's not meeting all three of those, that's why it's sitting there. Let it go. But I still have to work through that like everybody else. I can't imagine there's anybody out there that is such an expert on letting things go that it's all gone. I still work on it to this day.
Well, that's encouraging because I have lots of muscles to build in this area. That beep indicates we're about halfway through the episode, so if you're not walking a loop, you might want to turn around and head back now. Do you want to step back and tell us a little bit more about pop-up purge and your methodology so we can get an overview of how you like to approach starting with somebody?
Sure. I really enjoyed and learned so much when I had this small business where Wendy and I were helping people with the downsizing and moving into an older adult community. But what I saw, what was in common was that it would get difficult to make too many decisions under a short period of time. And invariably, we would move too much stuff, and there would be stacks of boxes in this place that people would go to. And Wendy would just be beside herself because it doesn't look pretty because she's a designer. And I'm like, I know, but the practical side of me, because I had project management in my background, get it done, get it done. Let's not argue with people, And it was physically difficult. And I started talking about the downsizing and decluttering on Instagram. And I had people reaching out to me saying, because of your words, I did this. And because you talked about that, I accomplished this. And someone said, you should write a book. You should just write a book about this. I'm like, oh my God, that would be a lot of work. But then I thought, my words are having impact. And I just believe in it so firmly. So I started writing the book, and I actually got it done in 2020. This is real life. This is what I learned. I wrote from the heart, and I wanted to say, this is how I would do it. And I called it Pop-Up Purge because it was, when I was talking about it, I said to a friend of mine, this is like a pop-up restaurant. You never know, what they're going to serve, but here it is. Let's just do it and get it done. And she's like, it's like a pop-up purge. I'm like, wow, she's right. Because to me, do it in small steps. 15 minutes, 30 minutes. I don't know what time frame people have available in their day. But if you just regularly say, hey, I'm going into the bathroom and I am going to clean out my medicine chest. I'm going into my bedroom and I'm clearing off the nightstand or the kitchen counter. If you just did these little bits, you get visible results. I feel better. To me, that's what a pop-up purge is. Just do these little things daily and it adds up. I think that's the way to get things done versus if I were on a diet, I'm never eating sugar again. Well, how realistic is that?
Exactly. And you're barking up the right tree here with me because I am all about taking the small steps. And I think if you have a house or even an apartment, it's really hard to tackle the whole thing in one fell swoop if it's possible at all, right? So the alternative is to already break it down. And I think that making it bite-sized makes it just that much less tempting to forego altogether. I've made the case here that taking care of your environment and being mindful about your environment can absolutely increase your health and well-being. But I just wondered your point of view on why is it important, if it is, to our health and well-being, how our space looks.
I think that the environment that we live in is highly, highly essential to our mental and physical and spiritual well-being. I think everything that touches us impacts us without a doubt. And if we ignore that, I think that we're overlooking something that is very critical in it. I think that when we step back, because we're so used to having a lot of noise around us, and the fact that we've gone through a pandemic, we're not fully out of it, really hit home for all of us what matters most. And for some of us, the connection with all the people around us and being in a lively environment, some of us were like, yay, it was too noisy to begin with. And others are like, oh my God, I'm dying here by myself. I actually have to look at my own navel for a change. I think there's a balance somewhere in there. It doesn't matter if you're an extrovert or introvert, but the fact of the matter is what's around us and what touches us physically or mentally or spiritually has an impact. And so we should be very careful about what we decide to curate as far as what we look at, what we listen to, and what we accept into our lives, and some things we take for granted. And it's like, hey, I could actually turn this off. Like I turned off notifications on my phone for some things. And wow, you never realize what a slave you are to your phone.
I very much agree with you. Those little dings, those little interruptions can really change our brain and change our ability to focus on what's important. And we get kind of addicted to them, which I'm definitely going to be talking about more. But absolutely, I agree that you have to be very mindful and very intentional about what does take our attention, because that is up for sale. And day in and day out, it can have a long-term impact on us. So absolutely. So I totally appreciate that perspective. And I do agree about making sure your environment is such that you can focus on what's important, your biggest goals and so on.
Yeah, I'm nodding and smiling over here because I am completely with you.
So just one more thing about your methodology I thought we should mention. What is the importance of doing some pre-work before you start? Like, shouldn't we just jump in and start with whatever's bugging us the most? Or what do you like to do and recommend that people do to set the stage for the process? And why do you think that's important?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, certainly we could all jump in and just start getting rid of some of the crap, so to speak, that's throughout the house. But for me, whether you're trying to lose weight, get in shape, get rid of clutter, or figure out your next move, I think it really behooves us to take time and write a couple of things down as to why. Why does it matter to you? What is the thing that you would realize or accomplish if you did it? If we talked about weight, well, yes, it's obvious we want to lose the weight, but it might be because you would have better health, or you would look better, or you would fit into something. And it's the same thing with decluttering. It may mean that you could move forward with something else in your life. And what is that? I think it's worth taking the time to write a couple of things down. And I know there are many people that don't like the idea of journaling or writing things down, but that's because you're having to face yourself and answer some questions that you haven't answered until now. And when you do that, it gives you that thing out there that when it gets hard, you can remind yourself, this is why I'm doing it. It's not because somebody said it was a good idea or
there's a Netflix special about it.
Yeah, or to make things look better. Many times our stuff just holds us back from moving into what we could be doing next. And so I think that's worth doing. And from there, just do little things. It doesn't have to be an all-day thing. I mean, my one biggest beef with Ms. Kondo is throw everything on your bed. Well, when are you ever going to sleep on that bed again? If you took everything out of your closet, and believe me, I have a lot of stuff in my closet too. When will I ever sleep there? So just start small. Start small and start in a place that you see every day. So like my advice would be, hey, the bathroom or maybe the kitchen, but if you start in the bathroom, clear off the counter, get the medicine cabinet. Every day you're going to go in there and it's going to look so much better. Like, I feel much better. What can I do next? Start little. Don't ever start big. Start little and it can get bigger from there.
Yeah, love it. And I love tying it to the why, and because it will get old, there'll be a day when you don't feel like spending a few minutes on it, or you leave it for a while and don't come back to it. And so really focusing on what drew you to it in the first place and what it might allow you to receive at the end, or if there is an end, I don't know, towards the end.
Carolyn, as a spoiler alert, none of these things ever end, as you well know. Whether it's getting in shape or feeling better physically, mentally. But the key is just to start small. And then when you start to bargain with yourself and reason with yourself as to why you shouldn't do it that day, you need to stop talking to yourself and just move ahead and say, oh, there must be a reason I'm supposed to do this, so I'm going to go do it. When I stop talking to myself like that and I do it later on, I'm like, oh, thank God I did that.
Exactly. I know it is always helpful. If I can think of my future self, if I can conjure up my future self at one of those pivotal moments, I often end up doing what's consistent with what, she would appreciate.
There you go. Overthinking never helps any of us.
No, that is true. Is there anything else about the methodology? And there's so many great approaches that you offer, and I love how the book is broken down. But is there anything else that you feel like we should mention?
I think the thing with decluttering is that, and I'm sure I've mentioned this before earlier, that it's not necessarily a glamorous task or project that we have. But for me, it really does lead to clarity in our life as to what we're going to do next, because our things are not just things. If they were just things, we could just let them go. There would not be any difficulty with releasing stuff and moving on. But it's because they're wrapped in our emotions. They're wrapped in the memories of stuff that happened, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they aren't good. But either way, we still hung on to them. It holds us in place. And we're still festering, and we probably stuffed them down simply because we don't have time to think about it, or we didn't want to because it was painful, or because it's difficult. But when we get to a crossroads in our life, it really is a good time to take stock, and it's so worthwhile to do that, because we do have stuff that we don't need to hang on to, whether it's feelings or beliefs or stuff that represents both of those. And when we do that, it's incredibly liberating. We really move on to a higher sense of self. And it feels so good. We'll be at that point where we think, why didn't we do this sooner? Well, because we weren't ready, and that's okay. But let's do it now. Let's make the moment now. And so my book is really not about some magical method of letting it go. If you follow these 6 steps, it's about facing why we've got it, but how we can let it go and move on and be happier and to be content with where we're at and to figure out the next thing.
Absolutely. Well, that's really helpful and so inspiring. And I have recently in my midlife come to a big crossroads for myself in terms of becoming an empty nester very recently. And so for me, I am ready and re-energized to take the next step in this realm. So I'm excited to do it with you through your book. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm a huge fan of yours, and I'm so glad to be able to share your work with the listener. And I will link to all the places you can be found. I'll maybe even link to some places that you sometimes can be found, like Instagram, just in case you pop back on there, people can find you. So we so appreciate your taking the time to talk to us and to lead us through your work. And I hope that the listener has a chance to reach out and get to know you and your work a little bit better.
It's been my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for listening to what I had to say and letting me be a part of your community, Carolyn, because you bring so much wisdom to all those that listen to you while they're walking. And I'm happy to be walking alongside with you as well, for sure. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you so much, Mary. Consider checking Mary's work and her approach out, which highlights the importance of knowing our why and being able to refocus on it as our motivation to keep decluttering and simplifying waxes and weans. She does a lot of exploring of the emotions around our stuff and asks us to really consider what we're feeling about our things. We can take on some of this on our own through a simple journaling process. I've found this orientation has helped me to figure out what's truly meaningful to me, which motivates me to get rid of the things that are less meaningful, especially those that are replaceable. It's a great case for knowing ourselves and our own situations. Sometimes we need some quick wins, as Mary alluded to get us fired up to tackle the harder, more emotionally fraught items. If that resonates, consider taking a trash bag and setting your timer for 5 minutes and then going around and getting rid of some stuff, some low-hanging fruit that you know you just don't need. Perhaps that jumpstart will give you the energy to tackle the harder stuff, perhaps with the help of Mary. More to come on the many approaches to decluttering and simplifying our lives for clarity and action and how they can help us amp up our wellness and our well-being. For now, take care of yourself, please, until we can be together next time. A reminder that neither I nor my podcast guests are doctors or healthcare professionals of any kind, and nothing on this podcast or associated content should be considered medical advice. The information provided by Wellness While Walking, Whole Life Workshop, and Bermuda Road Wellness, LLC, is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking any new healthcare regimen, including walking.